I was recently invited to speak at the Interior Educators Conference at Northumbria University. A huge thank you to the committee for inviting me. I presented a recent project in Newcastle upon Tyne, a little youth centre for YMCA Newcastle designed by 19 architects and for my PhD research. My talk explored how the multi-stakeholder collaboration model utilised in the new youth centre enhances the effectiveness of community-driven initiatives framed within a co-design methodology. Ultimately, however, the presentation focused on how a creative reuse of the building offers sustainable solutions to the challenges of austerity and public service provision. It was a fantastic opportunity to receive feedback on the project and to hear from other interior educators, a truly great conference.
Right, well, lovely to be here this afternoon, and thanks for the invite to the conference and for the introduction there. I'm here to talk about a recent project that I've delivered to site for YMCA Newcastle. The focus of the talk is, it does have some creative reuse in it, adaptive reuse in it, but it's also focused around co-design and what the benefits that can bring to projects such as this and for clients. So the title of the talk is Transforming Youth Support Through Community-Centric Co-Design and Creative Reuse in YMCA's Newcastle's New Youth Centre. That was a great introduction, but a little bit about me just because the slide's up there. So, chartered architect with 10 years experience in industry. Just after COVID, started my own practice called 19 Architects, and also started a PhD here at Northumbria University, an industrial doctorate with YMCA Newcastle as client. So originally the project, PhD, was actually just looking at social housing, but we realised that quite quickly, if there's not a structure to underpin young people moving into social housing, it's not giving them the best way to support them, it's not giving them the best opportunities to thrive and survive. And quite quickly this youth centre project was brought into the doctorate as well as a way to support young people on behalf of YMCA. And since this project is, well, nearly finished on site within the next month or so, I thought it would be quite an interesting reflection of where we've got to with it. So as I say, new youth centre in the east end of Newcastle. For those of you not from Newcastle, the east end out towards Walker, it's one of the poorest regions of the northeast of Newcastle. Certainly no funding down that way, quite a lot of youth disengagement, which leads to crimes and all the negative aspects that can bring. But it's effectively a new youth centre, and through what I'm hoping to demonstrate today is through reflective practice, co-design, the project will address gaps in the traditional social services, providing a supportive environment for young people in YMCA's new social housing, which, as I say, forms part of my doctorate, but then also a youth centre just for the wider area of the east end of Newcastle. For those of you who don't know what YMCA do, it's not just a 70s disco song. They are the largest provider of youth services in the UK, and they cover these 5 areas here. So family and youth work, health and well-being, housing, training and education, and support and guidance. So this is really important project that can tap into quite a few of those key ethos that the charity looks to deliver. Despite the overwhelming evidence of how important youth centres are in engagement with young people, the last 14 years of the previous governments, sort of commonly termed the austerity politics, has absolutely decimated the charity sector. Got some stats there in bold, but just to highlight, in the last 14 years, in the last decade, there's been funding cuts to the sector of 77%. That equates to £400 million being cut from the sector. 4,500 jobs have gone from youth support, and 750 youth centres across the country have closed in the last 10 to 14 years. So it really is a sector that's in crisis. But hopefully this project is something that can can kick on that East End of Newcastle and start to re-engage with young people. Just to frame what I hope to get across in this presentation, I've just put some 3 research questions up here, and these are also sort of formed in my doctorate, but I think it's quite a nice way to try and hang this presentation off and keep me from rambling too much as well. So, how does the multi-stakeholder collaboration used in the youth centre enhance the effectiveness of community initiatives? How can the creative reuse of existing buildings offer solutions to the challenges of austerity and public service provisions? And how does co-design and focus group methodologies contribute to the development of relevant projects such as this youth centre? A little bit about the building. It's an end terrace property, quite a large footprint. I was commissioned to undertake the work to the whole project. For today's talk, though, it will be primarily focused just on the ground floor, because that's where the actual youth services will be given. The first and second floors are offices for YMCA. As I say, it's an old, probably about 1930s terrace property. Very large spaces, but obviously it's a home, and those large spaces are quite disconnected from each other, and that's something that you really appreciate when you walk in the front door, just how everything is very individualised. There's no connection through the building. At the minute, it's really just used as a glorified storeroom for YMCA, so it was a great canvas to basically to see what we could do pushing them towards the youth centre. My first job was to go in and survey the building so that we had appropriate information and documentation for the co-design sessions. I use a digital survey. I draw things up in GoodNotes. I think I've of that on the iPad. It's really handy for surveys and bringing things together. But the ethos behind the survey was actually more generating as much information as possible to take to the co-design sessions with the people who would be involved. I'm sure we're aware not everyone can read plans, not everyone understands drawings necessarily, so it's really important to have, alongside plans, the visuals, 3D models, printed 3D models, and this is what this survey enabled me to undertake. So the initial co-design sessions were with YMCA staff, they were with YMCA users, and they were with people from the local area. And initially, we sort of went in with no fixed idea of what this youth centre was going to be used for, other than the young people and the charity. I really wanted to understand just from the users how they would use the space. And it was that initial co-design session that actually formed the brief. So normally I think you could arguably say clients come to you with a brief and it's your job as a professional to deliver that brief. I kind of flipped it for this project and I allowed the brief to evolve from the initial sessions. So I really wanted a contextually relevant approach. In my private practice, everything is sort of site-specific. It's not a copy and paste, and that's what this initial co-design led to. You can see just in the top right, that was a sketch later in the process, but we went back and we were talking about what the spaces would be used for. But the main thing that came out of it was just maximising the floor area and the flow through the building. And to the rear of the property is a large unused yard. Effectively, it's a car park, and that was just crying out for something to be built in that space as well. But throughout the process, there's an interesting balance when I was doing the co-design. This building is a celebration for the charity. The YMCA is 175-year-old next year, and this will be finished for their birthday celebrations. So the building is something it's open for the public. It's a celebration of what the charity can offer. But as I kind of touched on, it's not the best area where it's located. There are security concerns, and there's a real balance of how you actually juggle that, what I've termed sort of defensible space in my doctorate. You want this thing to be open to the public, you want it to have a welcoming face and show progression, and that there's positive things happening in the area, but it's with the knowledge that still people using it need to be safe. We've seen recent riots across the UK, people targeting various things, and that was a really interesting thing that came out of the co-design. So what ended up happening actually in the extension is the bit with the green roof above. We decided to go with high level windows, so it was lit from above. We had large roof lanterns above that space, and that meant when you're inside the space, it's really lovely, light and airy, but it has that sort of protection to the corner plot on which it's based. That was something really keen for YMCA. And I'll come on to it when I sort of developed the plans, but another celebration versus security issue that we touched upon was being able to effectively see through the building. So you might have seen at the beginning there, as I say, each room was quite individualised, quite bitty, I would say. Part of the brief was looking at how we could open that up so someone stood at the front door can actually see all the way through and aid for that natural surveillance, as it's called. I'll be honest, that's probably not something that had high level windows, that's not something that probably would have come out of, I think, just a general design. It was something specific to the client and to this area. And it's really it was interesting to me just to see how you balance those sort of pros and cons effectively when you're designing these things up. As I say, this is in Walker, we're trying to make it the heart of the area of Walker. There is another YMCA building not too far from here, which is currently got in for planning, which is refugee accommodation. They'll also be using this youth centre, so it's really making the area, the building, the heart of YMCA's offering to the region. It's understanding the user groups. It's to understand what I hate on plans when people just say multi-use or multi-function space like that. That means sort of nothing to me. I like to sort of define what those are, or at least have a use for them, because then you can appropriately design them. And what that led to during the design development, so the first plan there on the left is the plan as existing with the walls and obviously not being able to see through. And what we did during the co-design and looking at how to actually adapt this building was to knock back as many of the walls as we could. I can talk about what that middle space is in a little bit. I would have quite liked to have got rid of that, but storage is quite key. And then you can see then we filled the yard with the middle plan, and it doesn't matter where the YMCA staff are in this building, there are sight lines through. So what we did, we knocked out the existing windows and we framed those, we kept those open, but we framed them with like every beautiful plywood touch to those spaces, so you can see through the kitchenette into the new space at the back. There's a arts and crafts space, there's a mother and child. Everything has its designated use, but it's all connected throughout the building. And then the extension at the back is a new exercise zone, or a gym space, as the council made us call it. But the charity was also aware of that probably being the noisiest space, and next to a mother and child might not be ideal. So it was just looking at how to actually divide up those spaces for the client. As part of the co-design as well, it didn't stop after the brief was formed. It was something that it continued throughout the project, and even once this is now, we have planning in place now. We've gone through building control and we're now starting to do tender drawings so that the project could get priced. And even at this stage, it was a chance to bring the client on board for some co-design sessions and understand what they needed. So I briefly mentioned there that storage in the middle. The biggest thing was deliverable space for storage. there's a lot of things going in this building, and it was looking for unique ways to do that. So one of the sessions that we undertook was this framed storage wall, just something really simple, but it gives the client something quite tangible to look at. So the sketch was from the meeting, and I quickly drew this up in SketchUp on the computer, and we talked about how we can fit jackets in backpacks, purses, all these sorts of things. And the next meeting, this was actually a 3D printed model that we took, and they could actually walk around the building and see how it was going to be installed. So I think it's really important that co-design doesn't just stop, it's something that's carried throughout the sort of the renovation of these buildings, and it really gives the client that ownership over the project. As I say, though, even when we got into the technical drawings, the client was involved. We've got large floor-to-ceiling mirrors. We've got material finishes such as blackboard paint, so people can come in and draw on the walls, and it just gets wiped down. We have to include a buggies and bikes, though. As I say, one of the uses of the space is a mother and child group, or parent and child group. So that just making sure that those are included for. Ironically, building the extension is probably the easiest bit of designing that, because it's new build, be what it needs to be. Probably more apt for this conference, though, is just the level of sort of work that went into adapting the existing building. A building that had been added to and butchered over many decades, and it wasn't until we stripped it back. As you can see there, once we start stripping it back and you really see what you're working with, and a few details that that we had priced didn't work by the time we stripped it back, and we had to react while things were on site, which is never ideal, but you just don't know if these sort of properties just quite what you're going to find. So these were site progress photographs. You can see top left, a beautiful dual orientated space, loads of natural light coming in. That's probably going to be the main space that the people use as they just come in off the street to interact with YMCA. But you do have this middle space again with openings. There's a window there, but that now opens into the gym space. And as I say, we also did first and second floor, so we gave more space for the charity to actually run their operations from the building. And then bottom right is the yard where the extensions come in. So just to try and disseminate that and draw my presentation to a close based on the three research questions. The co-design was so important in this project. I mean, we always thought it was going to be, and it was a real driver of what we wanted to do with this. But it's not just a token word, it's not just a token gesture, it's something that is the spine of the whole project. So I've wrote there that the process allowed for a personalised understanding of the specific needs of the users. I don't think this is something that even would have come out of just the client giving a brief. It's not until you sit with the young people who'll be using the space, or the support staff who don't necessarily normally get a voice. It's not until you sit with those sort of people and you have models, you have visuals, and you just allow them free rein to draw over plans and start noting things about actually how you bring it in. It was the mix of natural surveillance and the maximisation of natural light, and how you do that for the locale. Obviously, I mentioned there's a bit of crime in the area, so it's just trying to work out how you do that. But the creative reuse, which I might touch on in the next slide actually, but the creative reuse, you know, if this is no longer a youth centre many years down the line, so what can we do to restore things back? And I feel like the interventions that we've put in means that building should be usable and can sustain itself over many years. The multi-stakeholder collaboration, I mean, I touched on the staff and the users, but it doesn't just include that, it obviously includes, well, I'm doing this as part of my doctorate as well, so it's included advice from the university, from my supervisors, Paul Jones, Peter Holgate. And then getting to site, obviously once contractors get a hold of things, things can change, so it's just understanding their requirements. And then there was also a funding body that was used to effectively to provide the funding for the work to take place. And it really is a challenge trying to juggle those sorts of stakeholders with the co-design elements and make sure that you're delivering for everybody. And then lastly, the impact for interior architecture. Well, I think someone once told me the best buildings effectively are those already built in terms of energy use, and I really sort of celebrate this building. Yes, it needed a lot of work doing to it to get it for the client, but it had effectively it was there right for development to take place, and it's been a challenge getting it to site and getting it nearly finished. But I wish I had some finished photographs for you, but I didn't get a chance to go out this week. But you've got to celebrate that this is a real kick on for YMCA and the support that they can offer, and hopefully it sort of encourages young people to come in, see the benefit of what sort of positive architecture can do for young people, and then I think it's a sustainable, cost-effective, socially impactful alternative when we are living still, unfortunately, through I think still austerity politics, aren't we? So I think that's it. Yeah.